Hello, this is Ricky from Data Mastery. Welcome to our channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about Databricks Asset Bundles. In one of the previous videos, we have set up the Databricks free edition integrated with AWS. Now we are gonna move a little bit forward and see how you can deploy your resources to Databricks. Now there are two parts. One is to set up Databricks infrastructure, which you can use like Terraform or whatever your ISC tool is. So you can build your Metastore, your clusters, your catalogs, RBAC and whatnot. So those are kind of resources that you build using your cloud infrastructure, like Terraform or other tools. And then there are certain resources that you want to deploy once the Databricks workspaces are set up. Now, these resources can be your jobs, your notebooks, your job clusters. So those kind of things can be done using Databricks Asset Bundles. Now, Databricks Asset Bundles are, you can say it's a built-in functionality that's provided by Databricks, which allows you to do your or build your CI/CD pipelines so that you can continuously integrate and deploy your code. And it also gives you a control on setting up the job clusters, serverless compute, your Python code, which you want to bundle as a package with your notebooks. So all of those resources can be added as part of your bundle. Now, if the one that you're looking at your screen, this is a basic high-level architecture. It is basically a typical CI/CD workflow. If you have worked on using GitHub Actions or any other CI/CD tool, this is a typical software development, CI/CD setup. Now, one thing what Databricks Asset Bundles do is they also use Terraform under the hood. So when you validate the bundle, and when you deploy the bundle, it uses Terraform deploy and it maintains the state file within your workspace. So we're going to talk about that in this demo that we're going to have in the video, but I just wanted to give you high level understanding of what DABs are, which is DAB is shortcut for Databricks Asset Bundle, and how you can leverage that in order to deploy resources to your Databricks workspace. Now this is my Databricks workspace. I'm using the free edition one, and this is what I'm gonna use to deploy some of the resources. Basically, we are going to use a very basic built-in the structure that the Databricks CLI provides us. Like you can just do some scaffolding project and it will give you a sense of understanding on how these things work, and then you can build on top of that and add more functionality. So what I'm going to do is, the first thing I need to do is to install Databricks CLI. So if you go to the Databricks webpage and look for various ways to install CLI, you see that it has all these options available for Windows, Linux, Mac, and whatnot. Now, one thing I noticed is that it is actually beneficial or helpful to use Databricks to install Databricks CLI using this command, or directly going to the Databricks GitHub repo and look for the releases. The reason for that is installing Databricks CLI using either of these approaches, make sure that you're always getting the latest version. If you try to install using pip, and pip is going to install a little bit older version, that will not work with some of the latest features which Databricks rolled out recently, because they keep on rolling out new features and keep on changing the schemas of their APIs, which will not work with older version. So I'm going to go ahead and use this curl command to fetch the latest Databricks CLI and install on my workspace. So copy this whole thing and open your VS Code. So I have a project folder which is empty right now. So first thing I need to do is I can So I'm going to use this curl command to install Databricks CLI. So let me open my VS Code, and then I'm going to just copy that command and paste here. So you need to put sudo in front of this, write your password. So the Databricks CLI has been installed, and if I run Databricks, you can see that I have a version 0.259, which is the latest version. You can verify that if you go to the Databricks Git repo, and you can see that the latest version is also 0.259. So that is the only thing that you need right now to get started with this demo. One other thing I usually do is to create a virtual environment in order to install any of the libraries. So instead of installing that on your base OS, you can install those in the virtual environment. In this case, we don't really need, but I'll just show you how to create a virtual environment. You can simply type Python VNV and then the virtual environment name, which I keep VNV as well. So this will install or create a virtual environment, and you can activate it using source VNV bin activate. And now your virtual environment is activated, and if you have to install anything using pip, you can just install it within your virtual environment. Now we have Databricks CLI set up, and we also have like virtual environment set up. The next thing I need to do is I need to authenticate with my workspace. So if you have not set up the free edition, or if you don't have a Databricks account, you can just go and set it up first. You can take a look at my previous video on how to set up a free edition. So you need to copy this workspace URL. And next thing that we need to do is to configure this. So I need to run a command Databricks auth login, then provide host, and host is gonna be my so host is gonna be the workspace URL which I copied. And now it's gonna ask you the profile name. So it is going to create a profile locally on your machine. So I'm gonna give it a default name so that I don't have to provide profile names again and again. And it will basically go and use OAuth to set up your credentials. You can see that you are authenticated because I was already logged in. Otherwise, I would have to log in again. So I'm logged in, and you can see that the profile default was successfully created. And if you look at inside your home directory, if you look at Databricks CFG, you see that there is a one default profile which got created. And now you can run a command like Databricks clusters list. I don't have any cluster, that's why you don't see any output here, but it confirms that you're able to connect with your account using Databricks CLI. Now using this Databricks CLI, we are going to create our Databricks Asset Bundle. So Databricks provides some of the templates that you can use right away. If you run the command Databricks and then bundle, then init means initialization, and just hit enter, it will provide you a list of default templates that you can use, like default Python, default SQL, DBT, MLOps. So I'm going to use the default Python. And then it will ask you for the project. So let's call it DAB POC. It will ask you, do you want a sample notebook, which we will say yes. And there's also a sample for the Delta Live Tables pipeline. Now, we are not really digging into the DLT pipeline or any of the code, but because this is more focused on how to deploy these resources, but I will still say yes and let it create a DLT pipeline as well. So now it says, do you want a sample Python package? you probably need some of your core libraries or the core functionality which you can package as a Python wheel package, and your notebooks are gonna import those basic packages or the core packages that you build. So every functionality is not going to be part of your notebooks. The core functionality stays in your source code or your Python package code. So that's why you can have this Python package set up as well. So I'm just going to walk you through about this structure of this project. But let's say yes to this as well. And now the next thing it's asking, are you going to use the serverless compute? Now, one thing with the free edition or the community edition is that you get access only to the serverless compute. You cannot create your own interactive clusters or all-purpose clusters. You just need to use serverless compute for jobs and for your interactive session as well. So in this, we need serverless compute. So I'll just say yes and hit enter. Now it's going to create entire project structure. So you can see this folder DAP POC has been created, and basically the entire project structure has been created as part of this initialization project. The core things that we need to focus on is this particular folder, which is called resources. So what it contains, it usually contains your YAML files about the job definitions, about cluster definitions. Now, in our case, we're not using interactive clusters, but if you have to specify job clusters, sorry, not interactive cluster, but the job clusters, you can specify in here, and you can refer that in your jobs. Now, let's take a look at this particular file. We have two resources right now. One is a job resource, other is a pipeline resource. Now, the job resource, this is how the job resources are structured. Basically, it starts with resources, then jobs, then whatever your job name is, which is a DAP POC job. And this is how you can trigger. Now you can trigger it manually as well, or you can trigger it based on a schedule. Like for example, in this case, it's going to trigger every day. And then you can send the email notification as well on failure or some other events. Now a job can have multiple tasks, and you can set up the dependency of one task on another task as well. In this case, we have a 3 task in this job. The first one is a notebook task. So there are different types of tasks as well. Your notebook type task or your Python wheel task. The first one is the notebook task, and what it needs is it needs a path to your notebook. Now my notebook is in the source directory. Remember, it asked us like whether we want to create a notebook under source and a pipeline. We said yes. So it has created a notebook. You can also keep your notebooks inside a notebooks folder. So in parallel to resources, you can create a notebooks folder, and you can just put your notebooks in that folder and make sure that you just modify the path here. And then the other task is the refresh pipeline. Now it depends on the notebook task pipeline. You can set up a not a pipeline, but a notebook task. And then it will basically refer a pipeline, which we are configuring in another YAML file. And the third one is the main task, which makes sure that the refresh pipeline is successful. And it is also packaging the code, which we have in our source folder. Within source folder, we have a DAP POC, and this is where my main.py file is. So your core files or your core logic can go into the source folder, and you can just bundle that as a Python wheel package. Now, one thing about this particular parameter, which is environment key, it is required if you want to use serverless compute with your Python wheel jobs or task. For a simple notebook task, if you want to use serverless compute, you don't have to specify anything about compute or cluster. By default, if you don't specify anything, Databricks is going to use serverless compute. Now, for those tasks which which has this Python wheel package. So it's going to bundle that source code, this guy, and then it's going to attach as a package, as a wheel package. You need to specify the environment key, and the environment key comes here. So you have to specify environments block, and then you specify the key, which is default in this case. It could be any, doesn't have to be default. You just give any name. And then the other spec is client version 2. And see, this is where the wheel package is gonna be saved, because there's a dap POC in the source folder. It contains my main.py, and there is also this toml file. This is basically creating the package for your main.py file. Which reminds me, in order to set up these, in order to create these wheel packages, you need setup tools installed. So I already have a virtual environment set up. I can do a pip install setup tools. So it will install all the required tools in order to create these wheel packages. So you can see that the requirement is already satisfied, which is good. Now let's talk about these this particular block environments, and under environments we have this spec. Now open this URL, which is API reference to the environments spec file, and you can just open this in the browser. Now look at this section, which is environment section. This is what we're talking about. You have environment key, which is just a string, and then you have a spec. Now under spec, you see that we are using client, but what it says here that the client is deprecated. So instead of using client, you have to use environment version. This is why you need to make sure that you're following the documentation very closely, and also the CLI or other packages should be up to date. Now, even though we have the latest CLI version, but within this, the template generation, they still are referring the client instead of environment version. So which is something that need to upgrade. So you copy this. We don't have to use client. We're going to use environment version. Now, what about this version here? What does this 1, 2, 3 means? So for environment version, you have this serverless environment versions. So click on this. Now, here you have all these release notes about version 16.4, 16.3 and all, but this is not what we need. What we need is serverless environment version. And here you see that version 1, version 2, version 3. So right now we are on version 3, which was released in June, and it's gonna be end of support after 3 years. Now, if you click on version 3, you will see all the new features and improvements, what it does and what it supports. So what we need to do in our case, we need to use environment version 3. So this is about setting up environments, and you can also add the dependencies here, which is a wheel package in our case. And this is only required if you have a task which needs a wheel package or a Python wheel task. If you're using a simple task for notebook, you don't need to specify any computer cluster config. By default, it's going to use the serverless compute. So this is about our job definition. The next resource that we have is a pipeline resource. So what it does is it creates a Delta Live table pipeline. You see this serverless has been set to true, so that the pipeline is also going to use serverless compute, and it needs this DLT pipeline notebook. And the bundle source is basically, it comes from the source folder. So it's going to create a bundle itself. So I'll show you how that looks like. So we have covered these two files in the resource folder. The next thing is the notebook. Now this notebook is a dummy code. You don't have to just understand this code, because this is just a template, and it works though, but we are not actually trying to get into the code itself. So only thing we need to focus is on the, okay, you have this notebook file, which is for the notebook job. And then you have this DLT pipeline file, which is basically called in the DLT pipeline resource. We don't have to focus on what this job does or what this pipeline does. Now, we have these different types of resources. We have notebooks into different folders. So how all of these come together? This is where you have to use this databricks.yaml file. So this contains your definition, like what resources that you want to include, where you want to deploy, and all that stuff. Now you can see here, you have a bundle. This is the bundle name, and then you have artifacts. So artifacts is basically a wheel package that we're gonna build. And then you have, these are the files that you want to include. So anything in the resource folder will be included, which is basically two YAML files, job definition and pipeline definition. And job definition and pipeline definition basically further referring my notebook and pipeline notebook. And then you have to tell where you want to deploy your bundle. Now there are two modes here, but before I talk about modes, the first thing is the targets, and here you specify dev and prod or UAT. This basically matches with your environments. Like if you have 3 environments, 2 environments, you can specify that. And this is the workspace URL or workspace host URL for each of the environment that you have. And then you can set up the mode. The mode is development or the mode is production. Now when mode is development, the Databricks Asset Bundle gets deployed under the users directory. Like if I'm deploying from my user and the mode is development, it will only be deployed under my directory so that I can deploy and test it out. And if all looks good, then I can merge my code to the main branch, and then the production deployment will happen. When the production mode is set, then you deploy under a shared directory or something. So you can basically change this path, which is the root path, and you can deploy under a shared directory so that everybody else can also leverage this. And you can also specify permissions, like who can manage this permission, manage this resource or manage these asset bundles, who can just read these asset bundles. So you can provide a username, you can provide AD group, you can provide a service principal ID. All those things can be added here. In my case, I just have one environment, so I don't need a prod. I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep it here, but I just keep it clean. So I only have a dev environment, although both of my hosts are same basically. So this is my workspace host URL. The mode is development, default true. Default true means when I run Databricks bundle deploy command, it will deploy to this workspace because it is set to true. We talked about these wheel packages. So how these wheel packages are built, it is basically built here. So this is, you can see here the Python artifacts type is wheel, and it will automatically figure out, because if you go to the job.yaml, here I'm specifying that this task needs a wheel package, right? And this is mapped with my default environment, and this is where to find the wheel package. When you specify this and try to deploy your asset bundle, Databricks will figure out itself that, okay, I need to build a wheel package. So this is the overall, you can say, structure of how your project will look like. Obviously, you can make some modifications, but more or less, this is what you will see. Now, once you make all these changes, you want to validate the code. So you can run a command, Databricks bundle validate. Okay, so I need to move to the dev POC folder and run the same command again. Now you can see that the Databricks bundle validate has been successfully validated. You can see the name of the bundle. The target is dev. This is the workspace. Now, one thing that probably you have noticed or you haven't noticed is that this new .databricks folder has been created. And this is what will use Terraform under the hood. So you can see this Terraform directory. So once I deploy this, it will basically get deployed using Terraform. And this directory is where you maintain the state file of your resource as well. So now I'm gonna say Databricks bundle deploy. Since I'm not specifying any target, but the dev target is the default target, that's why it's gonna just deploy to dev. And you see here, it is building the artifact, the Python artifact, because if you look at my Databricks.yaml, I'm specifying a Python artifact, which is of a type wheel. So the wheel packages are typically gets built under the dist or distribution folder. And if you go to the job.yaml, I'm specifying the path of my wheel package, which is also under the dist folder. And then the resources are deployed and deployment is complete. Now you see this Terraform directory here. So it has created this JSON file, tf.json, which contains basically a JSON version of whatever we just did. This is the state file, which it maintains internally. The plan file is something kind of a binary, and there is also a log state file as well. So under the hood, it uses Terraform to deploy these asset bundles. Now, if I go to my Databricks workspace, I have this new .bundle folder that got created right now. If you go here, the dev POC is my Databricks Asset Bundle, dev is the target, and you see all the files are here. And then I can also go to, you can say jobs and pipelines. So you see these two new jobs, dev POC job and dev POC pipeline. These two jobs are created today. The other two ones are basically which I was just doing some POC earlier. Now you can click on this. This is our job basically, and job has 3 tasks basically. You see these 3 tasks here. So this is what we defined in our job.yaml file. So you have a notebook task. It ref for the notebook which we have, and the compute type is serverless, and you see the type of this task is notebook task. And then you have a refresh pipeline which refers the DLT pipeline. You can see the type is pipeline and depends on the notebook task. And the third is the main task, which is also using serverless compute, and it is a type Python wheel, and it contains the wheel package basically. So what you can do is you can just trigger your job, click on run now, and it will trigger this job, and all these tasks are going to execute one by one based on the dependencies. And if there will be any issue or something, it will be reported to us. So you can also, in order to see the executions, you can either go to jobs and pipelines and you see the job runs. It will show you whatever the jobs that's basically running right now. And you can also directly go to job runs, and basically you just land onto the same view. So I can just click on this one and you see the first one is getting executed. You see this particular line of code from dev POC import main. Where it is coming from? It is coming from the wheel package, because if you go to the source, under source you have a dev POC, and then the dev POC contains main.py. Now how we are passing this main.py to our notebooks, it is part of our wheel package. So that is why all of your core functionality, your core module, everything, you should put this under the source and package the code as a wheel package, and then your notebooks are just going to import your code just like this syntax. So you don't have to put all of your logic in the notebook. So if you do that, you have to do that for every notebook. So just keep your core package inside your wheel bundle, make it more modular, and then just call those functions in your notebooks. So the first step has been executed, and this is my second step here, which is refreshing the pipeline. So it's just gonna, whatever the definition of pipeline that we have defined or the definition of the task, it's just gonna do that. And whether it finishes successfully or not, it will just give you that status. The second, this was the job, and then you have the pipeline as well. So you can trigger it manually, and we set up this thing to be triggered. The job was set up to be triggered once a day, but you can also set up these pipelines as well, and you can see the schedule here. It's every day, so it's part of the job basically, because your job task refers this pipeline. So it basically, the job is going to trigger this as well, as when the job, this entire job pipeline will be triggered. So you can see that this refresh pipeline, this is the task which basically refers the pipeline, and it executes that just to refresh the data. And then the main task is this one, which also does some processing on the data and show you the results. So all the task in my job has been completed. And if you want to modify anything, you can just modify your code, run the Databricks bundle validate, and then Databricks bundle deploy, and it will deploy your code. When it comes to putting this thing into GitHub Actions, and whether you're what do you want to use to authenticate with Databricks from GitHub Actions or any other CI/CD tool, you can create a personal access token, or you can also set up the trust relationship between your GitHub Actions or your CI/CD tool and your Databricks. So we will cover those things in upcoming videos. But in this video, I just wanted to cover what are Databricks Asset Bundles, why you should use them, and what type of resources that you can deploy, how you can deploy them, what's the structure of your project looks like, and how you can bundle all of your resources together and deploy them with Databricks bundle deploy command. So I hope this video is helpful, and if you have any question, please feel free to put that in the comment section. And like always, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Cheers.